Hello, MJ7 NLK here, and welcome back to the channel. If you're already a subscriber, then I would like to thank you for your continued support, and if you're not, then please click the button. It really does help the channel out. Today we are looking at the President Walker 2 CB radio. We will be taking a tour of the box, unboxing its contents, talking about its twin brother, quite a lot, expanding the radio, accessing the hidden services menu for power adjustment, and performing the usual power tests, so please do stick around. The President Walker 2 is jam-packed with features. It has a dual conversion super heterodyne receiver, automatic squelch control, public address, scan mode, talkback, key beep, and thank the Lord, it has Roger beep. It also has A&L filter, gotta have an anal filter, noise blanker, high cut filter, separate RF and mic gains, variable RF power, which is important and we'll talk about that later, Vox, and a built-in SWR meter. The Walker 2 does not have single sideband, so if this is a requirement for you, then take a look at the Mc Kinley or the Lincoln 2 Plus. Our Mc Kinley review can be viewed on screen here, and our Lincoln 2 Plus review will be coming soon. Frequent viewers of the channel will know that my favourite radio is currently the President Richard, aka the President Dick. I frequently have my Dick in my hand and use this more than any other radio I own. I am going to let you into a little secret now, which the more observant of you will already have noticed. The President Walker 2 is the same radio as the President Dick. The Walker 2 costs £179 and can be purchased from Knights Electrocom, one of the finest purveyors of CB radio equipment in the land. The Richard is currently on discount at £149, so dependent on your use case you could save yourself 30 quid. I am no expert on United States presidents, but assume that this radio is named after George W. Bush, where the W stands for Walker. That reminds me of an old joke from back in the day. What is the difference between George W. Bush and Bill Clinton's administrations? George W. had trouble controlling his generals, and Bill Clinton had trouble controlling his privates, aka the President Dick. Did you see what I did there? Moving on swiftly. One last thing to get out of the way before we delve into the unboxing is that I must point out that modifying a radio is at your own risk. I am doing this so you don't have to. You will have legal obligations in your region with regards to radio transmissions, licensing, and power outputs. You should always ensure that you are not causing a nuisance, and more importantly, you are not causing any radio interference or distress to others. So now that's out the way, let's crack on and let's get on with the unboxing of the Walker 2. So here we have the President Walker 2. Let's take a quick tour around the box. So we have automatic squelch control, ASC, and it's the 3rd generation. We have a QR code that takes you to the President Electronics website and the page for this particular radio. 7-colour display, and it is engineered to be the very best, as it says along the bottom. Checking the sides, mobile CB radio, all European norms supported, which is nice to see. We don't have a great deal of additional information on the edges of the box, and then flipping over to the rear of the box, we have the usual stencil that's on the back of nearly every President radio box. We have the standard DNC 520 microphone, the up-down microphone, and to be fair, they come with virtually every President radio these days. We have an SO239 connector for a PL259 antenna. We have Vox, PA, extension speaker, and it's nice to see a socketed power connector. And that's pretty much it as far as the box goes. But if I just grab my Dick, my President Richard that is, and you have a look at these two, you'll see that they are very, very similar. And that is because they are the same radio. But we will get back to that a little bit later on. Now let's crack on with the unboxing. So let's press on and open this up and see what we get inside. So here we go. We have the usual #1 CB President sticker. This is a relatively small one. They usually, or I have seen them at least 2 or 3 times the size. We have the Walker 2 user manual, which we will return to in a moment. We have the radio itself. Let me just remove that from its crinkly wrapping and put that to one side. And then in the accessories box, have a look at this. We have the removable power cable, which is fused. Excellent. Nice to see. We also have the standard DNC 520 microphone. Let me get that out of its rather noisy wrapper. These microphones, I say this in every video, these standard President radio microphones, the DNC 520s, they're really good microphones. They work incredibly well. They just feel a bit plasticky and a bit cheap and a bit light. So that's something that President could potentially work on. We get the accessories package with the clip for the microphone. It is fused, or we get a replacement fuse, and we also get the nuts for holding the unit to this bracket. And that's it as far as the accessories go. So moving on to the user manual, we'll have a brief look at this. So the user manual comes in multiple languages, and oh look, it comes in French. That never gets boring, and it comes in Spanish, English, and it also comes in Polish, which is very helpful because my wife is Polish, although she'd never read this because she can't stand radios. So let's take a brief look at the radio itself. It looks identical to the President Richard, with the difference of this CBPA in replacement of the Echo. And apart from that, it's nice to see the decent chunky heatsink on the rear. Hopefully you can see that well. Which means that this radio, when expanded, is likely to push a reasonable power output. But we will get back to that when we do our power tests. So let's compare the President Walker 2 to the President Richard. And I promise to try and cut down on the dick gags. Well, I'll do my best. The PCB of the Richard looks like this, and the PCB of the Walker looks like this. In fact, both PCBs have the same model and version number. Comparing the front of the radio, there are only a few minor differences between them. They have removed the echo feature on the Walker 2 and renamed the band button to F, which is not very helpful. Apart from that, they are visually identical. Now, in order to understand the differences between the radios, I need to briefly talk about frequencies, EU standards, and conformity. The Richard is a ham radio covering the 10 metre band, 28 MHz to 29.7. And the Walker 2 is a CB radio, covering the usual EU and UK norms. Both radios can be fully expanded to cover the entire 10, 11 and 12 metre bands, so that's 24.715 to 30.105 MHz. I will show you how to do this later. President Electronics have declared that the Walker 2 conforms to the 300-433 and 301-489 Part 13 standards, which cover CB radio and are required in order to use them on citizen band frequencies within the UK and Europe. President Electronics have also declared that the Richard conforms to a different set of standards required for ham radio equipment, being 301-489 Part 15 and 301-783. Both radios are essentially the same and cover the same frequencies when expanded, but are simply intended for different markets, and the conformity reflects this. So let's power up the Walker 2 and do a standard power test. Now we've set up for a standard power test, but the first thing we must do is turn the radio on. And in order to access the menu, you push and hold the channel selector for 3 seconds. And you move on to the key beep, push it again, and set that to off because that's very annoying. And then in order to make this a real radio, we need to enter the Roger beep settings and turn that on. Very satisfying. Now we can turn the radio off and we're ready to do our power test. So to undertake the standard power test, let's turn the radio on. And we are in FM mid-band channel 20. Let's see what power output we get as standard. That's 3.51 watts in AM. Moving over to FM, let's repeat that test. 3.48 watts is the power output. So we're looking at about 3.5 watts, which is rather conservative, really. What we'll do next is we will enter the service menu and see if we can push that up a little bit in standard mode and see if we can get it closer to 4 watts. So I've reset up the camera angle and I've also adjusted the lighting to attempt for you to be able to see the screen on the radio once it goes into the factory settings mode. The colour of that mode is clear, or white, clear I guess, and there's nothing you can do about that. That is just how it is in the factory settings, so that doesn't come across on the camera particularly well. So you need to perform some ninja moves in order to get into the service menu. It's not the easiest thing to do and it's not very easy to show on camera, but there are 4 things you need to do in order to get into the service menu. But before you do that, you must configure these 3 options on the radio in a very specific order. This switch must be set to CB. This switch, the EMG switch or emergency 1 channel switch, must be set to the off position, which is the center position. And this switch must be set to the ANL noise blanker and high cut filter switch must be set to the off position. So it is going in a diagonal downwards. So on, center, off. If you don't do that, you won't be able to get into the menu. So the next thing you need to do is push and hold the PTT button. So push it and hold it. Push and hold the mode button. Push and hold the F button. And then turn the radio on at the same time. So once you do that, the radio will enter the service menu. You know you're in there once you see PL displayed. And the value that's displayed next to it is the current value for this setting in the radio. So in this instance, my default value is 163. Now, some President radios, a higher value increases the power output, and some of them a lower value increases the power output. On this radio, it's the lower. So turning the channel selector will change the setting, and we should be able to change that down to the lowest value on this radio, which is 160. So that will make sure that in standard mode, this radio is pushing the highest power that it's capable of doing in standard mode, i.e. not expanding it. So to save that setting, you turn the radio off, Turning the radio back on. I'll switch to FM UK and I'll do a power test and see what that's done. So 4.01 watts in FM. Let's jump to AM and see what that does. 4.06 watts. So that is the low power adjustment, which gets us to very marginally over 4 watts. And what we'll do now is we'll go back into that menu and run through some of the other options, and I'll tell you what they are. Okay, so in order to move through the menu options, I'm using the up-down button on the microphone. So PL we know is AM/FM low power adjustment mode. The next mode that comes up that says FM, my default value is 500. This is the FM deviation mode. So select FM channel, 1.25K 30 MV, adjust to deviation of 1.8 kHz. Ensure you set mic gain dial to maximum when testing. So my advice on this one is leave it alone. The next option is AL. This is AM low power amplitude adjustment mode. My standard value is 178. Select AM channel, 1.25K 30 MV, adjust amplitude to 87%. Ensure you set mic gain dial to maximum when testing. The next item is the version number or software version number of the radio, which is 1.30. And then that takes you back to PL. Now, when the radio is expanded, you usually get your high power adjustment settings in the service menu. So the next thing we're going to do is open the radio and we will mod it, expand it, and then we will return here and see what additional options we get. So let's turn the radio off and set up for the modification. So there are two ways of modifying the Walker 2, and I will put a graphic up on the screen now so that you can see. One of them is simple. Like you do with most of the President radios, you cut the wire and you jump the jumper, and in this particular example that will unlock 8 watts AM, 8 watts FM, and unlock the channel bands, or the export 400 channels. The second method is to desolder the wire and move it to a different position, and that will give you 8 watts AM and 20 watts FM. So in order to do these mods, the simple mod, you only need to remove the bottom cover with the speaker, and the more complicated mod with the desoldering of the wire, you'll need to remove both the top and the bottom cover. This is the wire that needs to be moved from one position to another, and I'm going to desolder that now by effectively flipping this radio over and desoldering the relevant point. So I'll do that now and then I will be back. So you can see that I've desoldered the wire from the socket it was in, which I did on the other side of the board, and I managed to do so quite easily with a solder wick. I didn't need to break out the desoldering gun. So I'll now reposition this and resolder the wire into the correct or the alternative socket. Okay, so that has soldered the cable. I'm just going to have a very brief little clean up with IPA. Just to make it look nice. So that's it. We have performed the modification. The wire has been relocated, and we will move the jumper which I'll do now. That will unlock the channels, and it's reassembly and retest. Okay, so before you reassemble, it's always good to inspect the solder joint to make sure that you haven't bridged anything you shouldn't have bridged, and to have a little cleanup. Now, these speaker connectors can be a real pain in the backside. When you go to pull them out, you end up taking the plastic holder out. So I normally use a pair of pliers to hold this, and then a small screwdriver to hold the frame that's around it in order to remove it. So just double check that you don't have any bridges and that everything is soldered correctly. I mean, it's relatively straightforward and simple. The only complication with these radios is that they really are tiny, absolutely tiny electronics. I'm used to 8-bit sort of retro computing electronics, which is 5-10 times the size of this. So you just have to get used to the very, very small micro sort of circuits and wires and boards and things. So reassembly time. And that's it, the radio's back together. So I'm going to have a bit of a clean up and a tidy up, put some of this equipment away, and then we'll set up for another power test. So let's turn the radio back on, and let's see what type of power output we're getting. So I'm jump to FM UK, and we'll just do a power test at full power. So the radio is now outputting 22 watts on FM. And 7.7 watts on AM. So the next thing we're going to do is go back into the service menu and see if we've got some new power options in there now that the radio is modified, and then we can adjust those and see if we can push the power up a little bit more. So let's go all ninja on the settings. Okay, we jump back into service mode. And in service mode now we have an option PH, which is power high, and my value is set to 91. So I should be able to move this value, apologies, downwards, and I've been able to move that down to 80. Now you can actually do a power test in the service menu. So if I key up now, we're hitting 27 watts high. If I move to the next setting, that's power medium. My default setting here is 143. Now I think this option is for cutting the wire rather than moving the wire. So if you cut the wire, you'd be in the medium power setting, and this would then become applicable. But if you resolder and move the wire, then the high power option is the one. And then we have power low, which we had before, which was 160. So I'm not going to adjust the power medium setting. The upper setting has dropped to 80. Then we have the settings we had before. We have an AM setting now, which has a value of 166 by default. This is the AM high power amplitude adjustment setting, which should be set to 90% by standard. And then we have the AL, which is the AM low power amplitude, and the version number now reflects 1.30E because we're in expanded mode. And that's it for the service menu, so let's turn that off and we'll turn it back on. And then in FM we'll key up, let's do FM UK. 26.4 watts at maximum. And then we'll jump to AM. 7.76 watts. So that's it. That's the most power that you're going to get out of this radio when modifying. But to be honest, modifying the radio for power, it's mainly about getting the additional channels and the coverage and alphas. So if I change the adjustment here of the channel downwards, we should get 19 alpha. So we've unlocked the relevant bands, and the F key then changes the band plans from A to B, C, D, etc., and then your channels accordingly. So it would have been nice if they'd just left the F button called band like it is on the President Richard. I keep comparing the Walker 2 to the Richard, because the President Richard is one of the best radios that President make, in my opinion. The only thing that is missing on both radios is single sideband. They are near identical, but do have a few minor differences. The Richard has an echo feature and can achieve 40 watts FM and 50 watts AM when expanded and fully dialed up, versus the Walker 2, which has CB conformity and can achieve 27 watts FM and 8 watts AM. Now let's talk again about the price. The Walker 2 costs $179 and the Richard is currently on offer for $149, reduced from $179, which is a £30 saving on the original price. It appears that the Richard is being discontinued and being replaced with the Walker 2, which is an understandable decision for President to make, but I could be wrong. When purchasing the Richard from Knights, they offer an option at checkout to expand the radio for you. They do not, at this time of recording, offer the same option for the Walker 2. If you're not comfortable using a soldering iron or don't want to risk damaging the radio, then give Doug and his team a call and they might be able to accommodate the expansion for a small fee. It costs £5 on the Richard, which is worth every penny. The power gain control allows you to drop the power down to under 4 watts when using on CB frequencies, and then turn it up on ham frequencies to your licensed power envelope. Here in the UK, that is 10 watts for foundation license holders, 50 watts for intermediate, and 400 for full. A ham radio license does not license you to transmit on CB frequencies. Everyone using CB frequencies is limited to a maximum of 4 watts. This radio outputs 8 watts AM and 27 watts FM when turned up to the max. You can adjust the power output in the services menu to meet your maximum licensed power envelope, which only really applies to FM, as 8 watts AM is allowed within the minimum ham license category. Use a power meter, set the maximum you're allowed on FM, mark on the dial where 4 watts is, and on AM and FM, and you can ensure you stick to the legal requirements and get the best of both worlds. Being able to adjust the power output on a radio is not always about turning it up to the maximum. So, do we have a new king of the non-single sideband hill? Well, yes and no. They are basically the same radio, but it does mean that my favourite President radio will live on for longer, which can only be a good thing. Now quickly grab yourself a Richard before they get snapped up. They're 30 quid off. I hope you found the information in this video helpful. If you did, then please help the channel out by liking this video and subscribing. This really does help and ensures that I can continue to provide content. Feel free to buy me a coffee, the details are in the description below. And if you have any questions or any comments that you want to make, then you know what to do in the comments below. All I ask is that you keep it respectful. Nasty know-it-alls need not apply. So until next time, stay safe, stay happy, and catch you in the next one.